Hey folks, Barry here again. Got into a discussion today about people talking about comparing certain brands, talking about what brands they like, what things they don't like, and discussions about, you know, comparing your brand or your favorite brand, whatever it happens to be, versus others. And specifically today, it was mentioned about Vortex optics, and folks who've been following me for a while know that I've owned a ton of Vortex stuff. I've had red dots, I've had power variable low power variable optics. I've had pretty much I don't know, a half a dozen different items from them, and I've also used others. So I've got some limited experience with some of their other stuff too. And first off, I wanted to say that I don't hate Vortex at all. I think that for what they offer, in that sort of target market that they're going for, you can do a lot worse. I don't have any problem. I think that for about 90% of the people, out there who are just recreational shooters, who are competitive shooters, whatever, I think that Vortex has optics that are just fine for you. I think that they're, they fit the bill for what most people are going to ask them to do. In that price range, when you start comparing them to, things like Primary Arms optics or some of the Holosun offerings, things like that, you have to compare apples to apples in cases like that. And so that was something that I had mentioned was, I think that these work for a lot of people, but, for things, like I said, for a competition, I have the Strike Eagle 1-6 low power, and it's worked fine for me. I mean, I've used it for competition, for, just general recreation shooting, going out to, I don't know, 300, 400 yards or so. Not much beyond that. That sort of reaches its limitations. Like I said, it's fine. It does that. It does, it performs that task adequately for what I'm asking it to do. But what has to be remembered, and what I remind people, and what kind of got some backlash, was me saying that, well, yes, I understand what it's good for, but I'm under no illusions that that Strike Eagle is the same quality as, higher end, Night Force and stuff like that. And the comparisons that I'm trying to make are things like glass clarity, ease of use of the turrets, the reticles, things like that. How durable is the tube? I've dropped my Vortex optics. There's a good picture of me dropping one mounted on an AR straight down onto the deck from about 5 feet or so. It just does fine. I mean, it survives that. Sure, that's great. But that's not torture testing, man. That's not putting any real stress on the optic, other than for, just that 1 second. It's not being repeated. It's not getting, it's not in a patrol car getting bounced around or anything like that all day, every day. That might be messing up zero or causing damage to the tube or the glass or anything like that. That's not what I do. It's not what I've tried to do. So for those basic, incidents, if you are just some dude driving around on your ATV on your ranch and your gun falls off the back and, it lands and bangs your optic a little bit and it survives, cool, awesome. It's done what you've asked it to do. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't make it as good as something else. It might be good enough for you, and if it is, that's great. I'm super happy for you. Like I said, I use that Strike Eagle for basic, 3-gun stuff and having fun out in the desert, and it's good enough for that. Cool. But then they say, well, Barry, you don't have Night Force. You don't have the high-end, loopholes or any of that stuff. So how can you make a decision? Well, I don't own a Ferrari, but I know that it's faster than my Toyota, right? I don't have to have hands-on with a thing in order to understand what makes it work, in order to understand what makes it higher quality than something else, right? I know how to do research. I know where to go to find that information. I know the resources to ask. It's a matter of finding the information and interpreting it. You don't have to do and have hands-on everything in order to make those decisions. And in fact, having those resources and knowing how to do that research is what allows you to avoid having to go hands-on with some of that stuff in order to save yourself headache and time and money, right? Because what you see a lot of, especially, you see it a lot in the gun communities, guys will post up a picture on Facebook like, hey, look at this thing I just bought. What do you guys think? Let's hear your reviews. By that time, a person has already invested in it. They've invested money, and what they often don't admit is that they're invested emotionally in it. So you come back and you say, well, hey, that particular thing or that gun or whatever, it's known to have these problems. It's got bad pins. It's, the strikers break. It's the springs suck, whatever. But by the time that purchase is already made, the person is invested financially and emotionally in it, and so they kind of just don't want to hear it. You'll say, well, I came here for information. It's like, no, you didn't. You came here to be reassured about a thing that you had already done. And what you find is that people aren't going to reassure you. They're not just going to pat you on the back and stroke your ego and say, hey, that was a great deal. People are going to be honest, and they're going to say, no, you made a bad choice, right? You shouldn't have bought that thing. And here's why. There was a discussion a couple days ago about Kel-Tec. And actually, it was yesterday. It was a video of a Kel-Tec guy shooting it at the range, and it just broke in half. Like, it just fell apart. The gun just completely failed. Catastrophic failure. It didn't explode. It just fell apart. And so that brings me back, well, hey, Barry, if you've never used that, if you've never shot that thing, you don't have any frame of reference to judge it. And I've never smoked crack in my life, but I know I don't want to. I know enough to be able to avoid that decision process. I don't have to go down that road, realize how bad the decision was, and then hope I can backtrack and undo everything that's already happened. I can do the research. I can ask for informed opinions. I know the resources to go to. I know the right people to ask. And that's more important than knowing all of the answers, is knowing where to find the answers you don't have, right? I don't need to know everything about everything, but it sure is nice to know that, if I have a question about AKs, I know 2 or 3 guys who I go straight to and say, hey, tell me about this AK. Tell me why this one is better than this one. Because I know that they have the experience, that they've done, their own hands-on training, testing, whatever it happens to be. If I want to know about long-range shooting, I know 3 or 4 guys who I go straight to and say, tell me what caliber I want in order to do this. When I need optics, I know people to go to. And after, in the years that I've been doing this, I'm no expert by any means, but I've gotten to the point where I can identify those quality products and understand why I want to avoid one versus the other, why I'm willing to invest in one versus the other. So, like, for example, like I said, with the Vortex, I had a Vortex Spark 2 that I purchased just because I wanted a kind of smallish red dot. And at the time, I just didn't have, I didn't have aim point money. And that's not the poor's kind of thing. It's just, that's what I could afford. It wasn't a matter of, well, let me save up another $50 next month. No, I was light years away from being able to afford anything like that. So I got it. And it worked for a year or so. Zero started drifting. And at that point, I sent it in with the warranty, got it fixed. Hey, that's great. Warranty, that's fantastic. But having those warranties as a selling point sometimes means that they understand the thing might break. And that's a whole other discussion for another time. But in the interim, I've purchased myself an aim point, and I didn't have to buy 5 different aim points and work through which one was going to be reliable, because that data pool exists. I could just go out into the world, look for that information, and find it. I could find the resources, I could find the right people telling me what was going to work. And that informed my decision. Got the Vortex back, it still works. It's going to go on basically on a toy gun that gets shot once every 100 rounds a year, because I don't want to throw the thing out. I too get emotionally invested in things that I paid for, and I just don't like to throw things away, or I don't like to give things away or so whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I've moved on. I used that information gathered from other sources in order to inform my decision. So if you're going to come around and say, well, I have XYZ and you don't, so you don't know anything about it. Well, I might know a thing or two about it, and I might know people who know tons about it who have told me, hey, don't do that. You don't need to, don't bother going that way. And I take that information and I store it, and I, reserve it for later, so that when other people start going down that path, I can stop and say, hey, just so you know, this, and that, whatever it happens to be. So the bottom line that I want to make with this today, talking about high-end versus mid-range versus low-range, whatever it happens to be, is just know your requirements, okay? If your requirements are, you need a cheap red dot to go on a ranged toy that you're going to take out every couple of months and shoot 100 rounds, hey man, there are tons of options out there. And I'm not going to begrudge anybody for kind of going cheap and spending, $100, $150 on, on one of those Vortex red dots. But keep in mind what you're paying for. You're paying for diminished quality versus the higher quality things. That's just the way it is. And if that's something that you're willing to live with, hey, please, by all means, do it. Sometimes, you want to have something like that. I don't have any problem with it. If you're law enforcement, military, contract, whatever you happen to be, and you need something that's going to be, stand up to daily abuse, lots of, high round count, getting banged around in a truck, that kind of thing all the time, think twice. Think real hard about whether you want to spend $150 on that Vortex, and maybe you have to spend another $150 on a new one next month, another $150 6 months from now, whatever. And yeah, the warranty's great, but you want to be without an optic for 3 weeks, hey, that's up to you. I know there are a lot of people who that's not an option. And so, know your requirements, understand what you're asking the thing to do. If you do the research and you ask around and you get good enough information, and you decide that whatever you've been looking at is going to fit, check all of the boxes that you needed to check, go ahead and do it. Just don't be fooled into thinking that you're getting something that's just as good. So that's it for today. I'm having fun with these little videos. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.